August 1st, 1759. A plain near Minden in Westphalia. 6 British infantry battalions, about 3,000 men, stood in line formation, watching 60 French cannon pointed directly at them. The orders were unclear. Someone had made a mistake. These battalions weren't supposed to attack alone. They were supposed to wait for cavalry support, for the rest of the army, for coordination. But the officers interpreted their orders as an attack command, and British infantry followed orders. So they advanced, in perfect line formation, straight toward those 60 cannon, across open ground with no cover. Every military expert would have predicted annihilation. Artillery massacring infantry in the open was how battles were won. 6 battalions couldn't survive such a barrage. It was suicide. This is the story of the Battle of Minden, the day when 6 British infantry battalions did what should have been impossible. The advance through 60 cannon that proved British discipline was unbreakable, and the victory that became part of 1759, Britain's year of miracles, and is still celebrated every August 1st by British regiments who wear roses to honour the men who marched through hell. Welcome to Britain's history. Today we're covering the battle that proved courage and discipline could overcome impossible odds. Because Minden wasn't won through clever tactics or superior numbers, it was won through 6 battalions, refusing to stop advancing no matter what the French threw at them. But before we get to that incredible advance, before we watch British infantry walk through an artillery barrage that should have destroyed them, we need to understand the 7 Years' War context and why 1759 became Britain's most miraculous year. And if you're enjoying this, subscribe. We cover the battles that defined Britain, the moments of extraordinary courage, the victories against overwhelming odds, the days that proved British soldiers were second to none. Let's go back to 1759, the year that would transform the 7 Years' War. Britain and Prussia faced France, Austria, Russia, and Spain in a global conflict that had been grinding on since 1756. By early 1759, the situation looked grim for Britain and its allies. French armies threatened Prussia in Central Europe. Russia was pushing westward. Austria sought to reclaim Silesia. British forces struggled in North America, where French colonials and their Native American allies controlled vast territories. The war was enormously expensive. Britain was spending unprecedented sums on military operations and subsidies to continental allies. Public criticism was mounting. The government faced pressure to show results. Then 1759 began producing victories that would become legendary and transform the entire conflict. The 7 Years' War in Germany involved protecting Hanover, King George II's ancestral homeland and electorate. As King of Great Britain and Elector of Hanover, George II had dual responsibilities. French conquest of Hanover would be personally humiliating and strategically damaging. Britain therefore subsidised Hanoverian and allied German forces generously, and contributed British regiments to create an army commanded by Duke Ferdinand of Brunswick, a Prussian general of considerable skill and reputation. This wasn't the main theatre for Britain. North America mattered more strategically for trade and empire, but German operations protected British interests, defended an ally, and tied down French forces that might otherwise threaten Britain directly or reinforce French operations in North America. By summer 1759, Marshal de Contedes commanded a French army of about 54,000 men threatening Hanover. Brunswick commanded an allied army of about 51,000. British, Hanoverian, Hessian, and Prussian troops. The armies manoeuvred near Minden, looking for advantage. On August 1st, they found it. The British contingent included 6 infantry battalions: the 12th Foot, 20th Foot, 23rd Foot, Royal Welch Fusiliers, 25th Foot, 37th Foot, and 51st Foot. These were professional regiments with veteran soldiers. They trained in the British system. Line formation, volley fire, iron discipline. But they hadn't yet faced the kind of test that would come at Minden. The battle began at dawn with Allied artillery, opening fire on French positions. The plan was complex, multiple, coordinated attacks to break the French line. British and Hanoverian infantry would advance on the left. Allied cavalry would support them. Other forces would engage elsewhere. It required precise timing and clear orders. But in the confusion of battle, orders became unclear. The 6 British battalions and 3 Hanoverian battalions received instructions to advance. The exact wording is disputed, but the officers commanding these battalions interpreted it as an order for immediate attack. They should have waited for cavalry support. They should have coordinated with other units, but they understood their orders as advance now. So they advanced, 9 battalions, about 7,000 men, in perfect line formation. 2 ranks deep, muskets at the ready, drums beating, colours flying. They marched across the plain toward the French army, and as they advanced, 60 French cannon opened fire. The artillery barrage was devastating and terrifying. Cannonballs, solid iron spheres weighing 6 to 12 pounds depending on the gun, flew through the air with tremendous velocity and smashed into the advancing lines with sickening impact. Where they hit directly, men were torn apart instantly, bodies mangled beyond recognition. But solid shot could only kill men directly in its path. It created a narrow corridor of death as it bounced and rolled through formations. Grape shot was far worse for infantry in the open. Grape shot, dozens of smaller iron balls packed into canvas bags that disintegrated when fired, spread like giant shotgun blasts across wide areas. When grape shot hit an infantry line, it killed and wounded dozens of men at once, creating horrible carnage across entire sections of the formation. Men fell screaming. Others died instantly. Blood soaked the ground. The noise was overwhelming. The thunder of cannon fire, the whistle of shot through air, the screams of wounded men, the officers shouting orders to maintain formation. The British battalions marched into this barrage, knowing what awaited them. They'd trained for years, but training couldn't fully prepare soldiers for the reality of walking into concentrated artillery fire. Every instinct screamed to run, to seek cover, to do anything except continue advancing toward those guns. But British discipline overrode instinct. These soldiers trusted their officers, trusted their training, and trusted each other. Men fell by the score with every volley from those 60 French guns. Gaps appeared in the lines, sometimes individual casualties, sometimes entire sections cut down by grape shot. And the survivors did what British training had drilled into them through countless hours of practice. They closed ranks automatically. The men on either side of a fallen soldier stepped inward, closing the gap, maintaining the integrity of the line. The formation stayed intact, and it kept advancing forward at steady marching pace, as if this were a parade ground exercise rather than a battle where men were dying with every step. Officers walked alongside their men, maintaining discipline through example. Sergeants dressed the ranks, ensuring proper spacing and alignment. Colours, the battalion flags, stayed upright, giving the men a focal point, and the drums kept beating the rhythm of advance. In the chaos of artillery fire, with comrades falling around them, these soldiers maintained the discipline that made British infantry feared across Europe. For nearly a mile they advanced through that barrage. Modern estimates suggest they covered about 1,500 to 2,000 yards under continuous artillery fire. At walking pace in formation, that's perhaps 20 to 30 minutes of marching, while cannonballs and grape shot tore through the ranks. Every step, men fell. Every minute, the gaps grew larger and were closed again. The casualties mounted. But the advance didn't stop. French gunners couldn't believe what they were seeing. Artillery massacred infantry in the open. This was established military doctrine. No infantry could survive such concentrated fire. Certainly no infantry could maintain formation and continue advancing. But these British and Hanoverian soldiers did exactly that. They walked forward as if on parade, closing ranks when men fell, maintaining their line, advancing steadily toward the French position. This was what British training produced. These soldiers had drilled for years in formation movements and volley fire. They'd practiced until closing ranks was automatic, until maintaining line was instinctive. Under extreme stress, watching comrades torn apart by artillery, knowing the next cannonball might kill them, they executed their training mechanically. Fear didn't break them. Casualties didn't stop them. British discipline held. As the British battalions closed the distance, the French deployed cavalry to stop them. French cavalry, thousands of mounted soldiers with swords and lances, charged toward the advancing infantry. Cavalry charging infantry in the open should have been decisive. Infantry in line couldn't form defensive squares quickly enough. They'd be ridden down and slaughtered. This was basic military calculation. But British infantry didn't panic. They'd trained for this scenario. As the French cavalry thundered toward them, the British halted, dressed their ranks and prepared to receive cavalry. Some accounts suggest they formed squares, defensive formations presenting bayonets in all directions. Others indicate they simply formed their lines perpendicular to the cavalry charge, creating a wall of bayonets and muskets. Either way, they were ready. The French cavalry hit that wall of British steel and fire. British volleys crashed out at close range, thousands of muskets firing coordinated volleys that tore into the charging cavalry. Horses and riders fell. The charge staggered. French cavalrymen who reached the British lines met bayonets. British soldiers trained in close combat used their muskets as pikes, jabbing and thrusting at mounted attackers. The cavalry charge broke against British discipline. French cavalry made multiple attempts. They reformed and charged again. British volleys crashed out again. More horses and men fell. The attacks achieved nothing except casualties. British infantry, having survived the artillery barrage, now proved they could defeat cavalry charges as well. The French cavalry withdrew in disorder, having failed to stop the advance they were supposed to destroy. With the cavalry repulsed, the British battalions continued forward. They engaged French infantry, soldiers who'd watched British troops survive artillery and defeat cavalry, and were now demoralised. The combat was brutal but brief. British volleys at close range devastated French formations. French infantry, already shaken by what they'd witnessed, couldn't stand against the British attack. The French line collapsed. The 6 British battalions, having advanced nearly a mile through artillery fire, defeated multiple cavalry charges and broken French infantry, had achieved what no one thought possible. They'd won the battle virtually on their own. The rest of the Allied army, following up on British success, pursued the retreating French. Marshal de Contade's army withdrew in disorder, abandoning positions and equipment. The Allied victory at Minden was complete. British casualties from the 6 battalions were significant. Perhaps 1,200 to 1,300 killed and wounded out of 3,000 engaged. 40% casualties. They paid a terrible price for their advance, but they'd achieved victory against overwhelming odds, and they'd demonstrated British infantry courage and discipline in the most dramatic way imaginable. The aftermath of Minden included controversy. Lord George Sackville commanded British cavalry and was supposed to support the infantry advance, but orders didn't reach him clearly, or he hesitated, or he misunderstood the situation. Accounts vary. His cavalry didn't pursue the broken French army effectively. This failure to exploit the victory led to Sackville's court-martial and disgrace. He'd been given the opportunity to turn victory into annihilation and had failed. But the infantry's achievement couldn't be diminished by cavalry failures. 6 British battalions had done what military theory said was impossible. They'd advanced through concentrated artillery fire, they'd defeated cavalry charges, they'd broken enemy infantry, and they'd won the battle. This was British infantry at its finest. Disciplined, courageous, unstoppable. The victory at Minden had strategic consequences. French control of Hanover was prevented. Allied positions in Germany were secured. French morale was damaged. If British infantry could do this, what else might they achieve? And British confidence soared. The regiments that fought at Minden earned legendary status. Their achievement became the standard by which British infantry measured itself. Minden also became part of 1759's remarkable string of victories. In September, Quebec fell to British forces in North America. General Wolfe's famous victory on the Plains of Abraham that secured Canada. In November, Admiral Hawke destroyed the French fleet at Quiberon Bay during a storm preventing French invasion of Britain. Minden in August, Quebec in September, Quiberon Bay in November. 3 victories in 3 different theatres. 1759 became known as the Annus Mirabilis, the Year of Miracles, and Minden was the land victory that proved British soldiers could achieve the impossible. The battle also created a tradition that continues today. As the British battalions advanced toward Minden that August morning, they passed through gardens where roses were blooming. Soldiers picked red and yellow roses and wore them in their caps as they marched to battle. The roses became symbols of that day, of courage, of discipline, of the advance that shouldn't have succeeded, but did. After the victory, August 1st became Minden Day for the regiments involved. Every year, on August 1st, these regiments and their successor units wear roses, red and yellow, to honour the men who advanced through 60 cannon and survived. This tradition isn't just ceremonial nostalgia, it's living memory of extraordinary courage maintained across generations. When modern British soldiers wear Minden roses, they're connecting directly to their predecessors who faced impossible odds and prevailed through discipline and courage. They're remembering that British infantry doesn't break under fire, that training and professionalism create soldiers capable of achieving the impossible, and that regimental traditions matter. They're honouring not just the victory, but the values that made it possible. Discipline under pressure, courage in the face of death, loyalty to comrades and regiment, and the refusal to give up no matter the odds. Minden Day celebrations happen annually across British military establishments and among veteran organisations. Parades where participants wear roses, ceremonies commemorating the battle, formal dinners where the toast honours the glorious memory of Minden, and gatherings where veterans and serving soldiers share stories and maintain bonds. The tradition keeps the memory alive nearly 300 years later, making Minden one of the most consistently commemorated battles in British military history. Regiments take pride in their Minden heritage. Officers study the battle as an example of what discipline and training can achieve. And every August 1st, those roses remind everyone that British infantry can do what others consider impossible. The tactical lessons of Minden influenced British military thought for generations. The battle proved that disciplined infantry, in line formation, could survive artillery barrages that should have destroyed them. It demonstrated that British training produced soldiers who maintained formation under extreme stress. And it validated the British system of professional volunteer soldiers trained to exceptional standards. Continental armies with conscripts couldn't match this level of discipline. British infantry could do what others couldn't. Minden also reinforced British confidence in offensive tactics. The 6 battalions had attacked when they should have waited, advanced when they should have retreated, and won when they should have been annihilated. This validated aggressive approaches. British commanders learned that disciplined troops could execute audacious attacks successfully. The willingness to accept risk for potential gain, demonstrated dramatically at Minden, became part of British military culture. For the French, Minden was demoralising. They'd had superior numbers, strong defensive positions, massive artillery advantage, and cavalry superiority. And 6 British battalions had marched through everything they could throw at them and won anyway. The psychological impact was enormous. French respect for British infantry, already considerable after battles like Dettingen, increased dramatically. British troops gained a reputation for being unstoppable in the attack, a reputation that would carry through the Napoleonic Wars. The men who fought at Minden never forgot what they'd achieved. Veterans told stories of the advance through the artillery barrage. They remembered closing ranks as comrades fell. They recalled the French cavalry charges and the British volleys that broke them. These were soldiers who'd done what military theory said couldn't be done. They'd survived when they should have died. They'd won when victory seemed impossible. That kind of experience bonds men together and creates regimental pride that lasts forever. For British military history, Minden holds special significance that extends far beyond the tactical victory itself. It was proof that British infantry, discipline and courage were unmatched anywhere in Europe. It was validation that training and professional standards produced soldiers capable of extraordinary achievements that other armies considered impossible. And it was demonstration that British troops, properly led and motivated, could accomplish what military theory said couldn't be done. Minden became the standard by which British infantry measured itself. If 6 battalions could march through 60 cannon and win, what else could British soldiers achieve? That August day in 1759, when 6 British battalions advanced through 60 cannon and won, wasn't just a tactical victory. It was a statement about what British soldiers could achieve. It showed that discipline beats firepower when men refuse to break. It proved that courage and training create soldiers who march through hell without flinching. And it established a standard of British infantry excellence that would define military engagements for the next century. If this is the kind of history that matters to you, the battles where British courage proved decisive, the moments when discipline overcame impossible odds, the victories that showed why British infantry was feared and respected across the world, then you know what to do. These are the stories that deserve to be remembered. These are the traditions that live on in British regiments today. Thank you for watching Britain's history, the battles that shaped a nation, told the way they deserve to be told.